So, there's things that you think you know, and books are very, reading is one thing. Reading is an amazing thing. But you know what's better than reading? Listening to the elders speak when they were alive is more powerful than a book about them and their passing. And since we have technology, we can listen to the elders and the ancestors in real time.
No education, and come here and pool their little nickels and dimes and set up little stores, develop these stores into larger stores, develop this into an industry which creates job opportunities for whites. And today the black man, according to the government economist, has spending power of $20 billion per year. We feel that with the black man spending $20 billion a year, not setting up any businesses, not creating any industry, not creating any job opportunities for his own kind, he's not in a moral position to point the finger today at the white man and tell the white man that he's discriminating against him for not giving him a job in factories that he himself set up.
I know that this is very hard to believe, but the black people of the 1960s were not the people who you think they are. Black people were conservatives and they were Republicans. The same way that Republicans of today are against government handouts and welfare, our black leaders were also against it because they knew that we had the power and the ingenuity to do it ourselves. And we figured that it didn't make sense to ask the white man for a job when we have enough spending power to create our own industry, which means that the African American now that depends on subsidies and welfare is not in alignment with the ancestors from the 1960s. History is so distorted.
The black man has $20 billion, and these so-called Negro leaders are such geniuses that they can integrate white restaurants and integrate white factories and force themselves. White immigrants can come to this country 50 years ago with nickels and dimes and no education, and come here and pool their little nickels and dimes and set up little stores, develop these stores into larger stores, develop this into an industry which creates job opportunities for whites. And today the black man, according to the government economist, has spending power of $20 billion per year. We feel that with the black man spending $20 billion a year, not setting up any businesses, not creating any industry, not creating any job opportunities for his own kind, he's not in a moral position to point the finger today at the white man and tell them that what the white man has set up, they should use this same ingenuity to show the black people how to pool our wealth.
Now, it's very crazy because I always say, what is racism? The black Americans do not like the current Republicans because the current Republicans are against welfare and handouts. But little do most black people know that the revolutionaries and the activists of the 60s that they think that they are mimicking were also against handouts and subsidies. So when Malcolm X said he was against subsidies and that he didn't want handouts and that we had the mental ingenuity to do it ourselves, that was empowerment. When the white man says exactly the same thing that Malcolm X said, it is racism. This is proof that Americans do not understand the concept of race and racism and equality. And it's that easy to manipulate our people to go against our ancestors.
White factories and force themselves into that which the white man has set up. They should use this same ingenuity to show the black people how to pool our wealth and set up something of our own.
I think if the election were held today, President Johnson would carry the South overwhelmingly. There may be one or two exceptions like Mississippi and Alabama, but I think he would carry it overwhelmingly because he is a Southerner. I think there's a great deal of pride on the part of Southerners because the Southerners in the White House.
My whole life as an African-American young man, I was told that black people were Republicans because Lyndon B. Johnson, as if he was supposed to be the savior for black people. But it doesn't sound like Martin Luther King sees that. It just sounds like he is a representation of the Southern ideology. So, black people were Republicans and did not have a candidate to endorse.
I don't see any Republican candidate at this point who can carry the South over President Johnson, even Senator Goldwater.
What about the Republican Party generally in the North? What kind of support among Negroes does it enjoy now?
Black people were lied to. We were told that the reason that we became a part of the Democratic Party is because the Democratic Party, which has always been associated with Dixiecrats or racist Americans, crossed over and diluted the Republican Party. Okay, so because of a handful of people may have done that, that doesn't mean that the Democrats stopped being Dixiecrats and stopped being racist. History is so simplistic that we've been manipulated into going out of the party that we helped establish, which was rich because of the businesses and black businessmen and women, to going to a party that only believes in social programs that only benefits the chosen winners.
Well, it will depend on the candidate. I think in this election year, more than any other, the Negro will vote for the candidate and the party that will take a forthright, determined, and consistent stand on the civil rights issue.
What you just heard was the most demeaning thing that happened to the black community. This declaration that we will only endorse a candidate that supports civil rights means that a racist could say that they're for civil rights and do you dubiously. Malcolm X just said that he did not believe in handouts and subsidies because it does not produce self-sufficiency and jobs. Martin Luther King is saying that civil rights is the thing that black people will support. The problem is civil rights did not end in more self-sufficiency. The civil rights movement that Martin Luther King is talking about ended with government dependency and diluting and divesting from black couples and families, but enforcing and uplifting black single parenting, because they know that statistically every person is at a disadvantage that does not grow up to see both parents in the same household.
And if a strong Republican candidate is nominated who takes a very strong position at this point, I'm sure that he can get some support in the Negro community. It is difficult to say at this point, or impossible to say, whether that person could get more support than President Johnson. I think it will depend on developments over.
This is the moment that history is distorted. Your ancestor is telling you that the Republican was the party of the Negro, but there was not enough political support to defeat Lyndon B. Johnson. So by...
And also, I think it's important to note at this point in history, this is when Richard Nixon became a Republican. So I'm sure, this is just my opinion. This is not based off of any history, but all of this is happening at the same time. So it's almost like this election, with that involved Nixon. Once he became Republican, it's like that immediately turned off black people and just made them go the opposite way. But prior to this election, clearly, black people were Republicans.
Default, that was who we had to support. Not because we were Democrats, because we did not have a candidate. Just like we don't have one now that genuinely supports our ancestors and the beliefs of our ancestors, who was against handouts, who was against subsidies, who was for family, who were Christians. That's who our ancestors were. That's who they are.
The next few months, certainly President Johnson has taken a strong stand now, and if this continues, I'm sure that he will get great support from the... I don't see any Republican candidate at this point who can carry the South over President Johnson, even Senator Goldwater.
What about the Republican Party generally in the North? What kind of support among Negroes does it enjoy now?
Well, it will depend on the candidate. I think in this election year, more than any other, the Negro will vote for the candidate and the party that will take a forthright, determined, and consistent stand on the civil rights issue. And if a strong Republican candidate is nominated who takes a very strong position at this point, I'm sure that he can get some support in the Negro community. It is difficult to say at this point, or impossible to say, whether that person could get more support than President Johnson.
I think there's a real danger of the Republican Party becoming the white man's party in this country.
I think this is a real danger, and I've talked with some Negro Republicans who are very concerned about this. I see trends and developments which will reveal that unless the liberals of the Republican Party take play a much more decisive role in leadership positions, this will become a white man's party.
Now, here's some black history that you never hear about. The fact that Dr. Martin Luther King was a Republican. The fact that liberals were Republican, not Democrat. The fact that Democrats were conservative. Also, Dr. Martin Luther King was against communism. That's what it says. It says that Malcolm X also believed that the Negro cannot criticize the white man for not hiring him in his white company because the Negro had enough money to produce our own companies. But instead, we became consumers. You, the pro-black of today in 2024, are not in alignment with Dr. Martin Luther King and Malcolm X, the Great. You are not in alignment with your ancestors. You are in alignment with the ancestors of the enemy that you claim to fight against. How does it feel? How does it feel to be manipulated by media and by false education? How does it feel that your ancestors also betrayed you? Not Martin Luther King, the parents and grandparents that didn't read and should have known these things. Now, I don't blame them because they're human. But what I will do is say that we can't keep falling for the same rhetoric and the same mistakes. Eventually, we have to become politically sophisticated and understand how to take our destiny into our own hands. We have to become better thinkers, and we can't just believe what they tell us and just assume because they say something that that's what it is. We were Republicans. We were anti-handouts. We were pro-self-sufficiency. Now, Martin Luther King was for federal programs and protection, but Malcolm X was not. So you got two different flavors, and what this shows is that we have never been all on one page historically. We have never had one thought or one agreement. So we have to move better in the future. We're moving based on